Good morning. Welcome to Dream Big Today. Used to be Elizabeth Sharon Ann, and I say used to, it will be officially changed September 1st. And so just want you to get used to the connection of it and just know that moving forward, September 1st, it will be Dream Big Today. So we're telling you every day so you can remember that. I need to know things every day so I can remember too. So you know what, this is for me too. My name's Debbie. Welcome. This is a fantastic Friday, and I'm so glad that you've joined us. And just in case if you are wondering, today is 224 days that we have read into the Bible this year. So we're 2/3 of the way through, and isn't it awesome to just be able to get into the Word and just go for it? I want to start out with my devotion this morning, and all of this ties together just great. King Jesus, when I begin the day or a task feeling inadequate, I need to pause and hear you saying, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness." The present tense of verb is highlights the continual availability of your wondrous grace. How awesome is that? I don't want to waste energy regretting how weak I feel. Instead, I can embrace my insufficiency, rejoicing that it helps me realize how much I need you. As I come to you in my weakness, I delight in your infinite sufficiency. Okay, so I'm applying all of this to today's reading into my life. Nehemiah 3:15 is where we're going to start, and we'll end in chapter 5, verse 13. But as you have read, let me just stop just for a tiny moment. I'm too excited to get on into the Word and what I want to say. But let me remind you to put your prayer request in the chat box and your praise reports too, because we want to hear all of that. And if you're new, be sure to text or put in the messages, where you're from, and so we can just kind of get used to seeing your name. And so anyway, I think I covered all of that. Oh, there's my buddy Donna. She's probably thinking, man, Debbie, I wondered if you were ever going to say anything about the praise reports. Because see, and prayer requests, she records all of that, and it's prayed over every day. Now then, okay, I think I have all of my little housekeeping duties done right now. So we're going to get into the word Nehemiah. Nehemiah's got a big job going on here. Good morning, Dee. He has been, to think about what they're undertaking, all of the people that they're having to organize to get this job completed, to get the city safe, to rebuild, for everybody to come together. Well, have you ever thought about how hard that is? It's hard enough to get your family to come together, let alone a bunch of people that probably think, well, I don't have to listen to you. You're not the boss of me. In fact, I heard my 5-year-old and another little 5-year-old tell each other that at Bible school. You're not the boss of me. Well, you're not the boss of me. Well, I wonder if that even happened with Nehemiah. So as we get started, Nehemiah 3 in this part is showing the need for believers to work together to accomplish something. The work done was a reflection on the families. This was evidence of Nehemiah's leadership. And the leadership that Nehemiah has is over the top. I think it's great. We in my world, I am on the board of a couple of organizations, and with that comes responsibilities. Well, you know what? Reading this word boosted me in my responsibilities as I was studying yesterday, because there's some hard things that you have to do in life, and it doesn't matter if you're on the board, if you have a job. I mean, I'm retired, I don't have that job, or if it's responsibilities for your families. When somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do, it needs to be addressed. Nehemiah addressed everything that people needed to do. He took the role of leadership. He made each man accountable for his own work. Everybody had a section of wall. He started with the priest, and I think that's a pretty great thing. Each priest prepared the wall in front of his own house in addition to other sections. So if each person was responsible for their own section, then one, he would be more motivated to build it quickly and properly. Two, he wouldn't waste time traveling to more distant parts of the walls. I can remember having folks that just kind of were wanderers, and they would be looked really busy, but they weren't doing anything. I've seen those kind of people. And then thirdly, he would defend his own home if the wall was attacked. Oh, and one more point, he would be able to make the building a family effort. When everybody joins in together, everything goes great. Well, I was studying how Nehemiah was just all over being efficient and getting it done. Why? And not waiting till tomorrow. When you have an important duty to do, it's best just to jump in. It's not going to get done unless if you start, and it's not going to be completed if you don't wrangle everybody in. And you've got to be able to encourage them, to make them feel a part of what's going on. That's why the family thing was so great, because they got the families involved. Everybody was there. He was effective because he organized the work for maximum efficiency. Everybody, just like the priest, everybody had their section. And when some of these people got through with their section, they went over and started helping somebody else. And what a message that speaks is that shows that you're not selfish. Just because you got your section done and it looks great and it's beautiful, doesn't mean you go inside and shut the door and hear the banging and cleaning up all around you. Go in and help other people, because they may have struggles, they may have things that they can't do as well as you do. My husband and I'm saying I very lightly, because I kind of didn't get totally involved, but my connections was to, I kind of volunteered him. He was voluntold to take on a project that was, he would been no big deal several years ago. But we went to help somebody in redoing some walls in their house. Well, here we are doing walls in Nehemiah. But whenever those walls aren't supported, and whenever you have no drywall, and the insulation is falling out, and the heat and the cold can't be efficiently used in the seasonal time of year, it needs to be repaired and fixed. And sometimes somebody can't just do that on their own. If you have somebody that knows how to do it, they can put their skills to work with their wife encouraging them, and jump in there and redo the insulation, redo the drywall. This is what Nehemiah had going on here. So he got both the high and the low people. I mean, it didn't matter who you were. If you were a part of that community, then you were involved in this work. He was willing to let people try new things. We see there was goldsmiths, priests, perfumers. All of these people became construction workers. It is not a bad thing to know how to do other odd jobs or talents or whatever you want to call it. We like to pull in our grandson, the older grandson, so he can learn some skills that are just things that you need to know. Nehemiah, again, was an effective leader because he made people focus on their own house first, get everything figured out how to do this on your own. And then when you go help somebody else, it's more efficient because you practice. You already know how. And then Nehemiah was effective because he didn't disqualify people because of their past sins or compromise. He got everybody involved, that everybody was united. Everybody was as one whenever they were focusing on building this huge wall, this thick wall, cleaning everything up to protect it from the enemy. So then what happens when this takes place? What happens is, here comes the enemy. So in chapter 4, verse 1, we see Sanballat, and he is angry. Bless his heart. When he learned that Nehemiah is speaking in the first person. When Sanballat learned that we were building the wall, he flew into a rage and mocked the Jews, saying in front of his friends and the Samaritan officers. Now I'm going to stop there just for a second. Good morning, Jamie. My daughter is on watching me today. I'm so glad that you took time for mom today. Okay, Samaritans. What's a Samaritan? This is the first time that this has been mentioned in the Old Testament. Now we've been reading it in the New Testament because we have we're reading the one-year Bible. But let's take a really brief lesson on what is a Samaritan. So 300 years before Nehemiah's time, the northern kingdom of Israel was conquered and most of the people were carried away captive. Sargon of Assyria repopulated Israel with captives from other lands. These captives eventually intermarried with the few Israelites who remained in the land to form a mixed race of people who became known as the Samaritans. So the Jews who returned to Jerusalem in the southern region would have nothing to do with them because they regarded them racially impure. So those are the Samaritans. And most of you probably knew that, but I like to be reminded of some of these. So he's really criticizing the Jews. They're nothing. Well, do they actually think they can make something of stones from a rubbish heap and charred ones at that? And so Tobiah, the Ammonite, who was standing beside him, remarked that stone wall would collapse even if a fox walked along the top of it. So, when you're working on something for, on a mission for God, you've got, Jesus beside you and you're doing, God's work, somebody's going to come along beside and be critical. It doesn't matter what it is. They're gonna pick something to poke at. And more than likely, because that's a spiritual attack, that they hit the one button that would just drive you crazy. Well, here they are, everybody's working together, doing skills and crafts that they haven't refined, and they're being criticized by somebody that's threatening them. But Nehemiah prays, "Hear us, our God, for we are being mocked." He knows that could be a real issue. May their scoffing fall back on their heads, and may they themselves become captives in a foreign land. Do not ignore their guilt. Do not blot out their sins, for they have provoked you to anger here in front of the builders. Now, Nehemiah is not praying for revenge. It sounds like it, but he's not praying for revenge, but that God's justice would be carried out. This response is a great example. He didn't do any kind of a debate, or he didn't form a committee. He didn't even deal with the two enemies. He didn't even go run out there and stand toe to toe with them and you know, have this spitting match on why you shouldn't have said this and all. He took it straight to God in prayer. That is a lesson for us today, because you know what? We have people come out at us in many different ways and can offend you, can hurt your feelings. And maybe that is even a relative. But instead of trying to one up them on what you have to say and you know, qualify your words, just don't say anything. Pray. Just walk away and pray. If we're angry or have a real enemy, start praying. Never revenge or never for revenge or for evil, but turn it over to a good and just God, because God knows exactly what to do with them. Just pray for that enemy. So in verse 6, finally, the wall, it says, at last the wall was completed to half its normal height around the city. The people worked with enthusiasm. The people worked together. And on down in verse 9, he says, but we prayed to our God and guarded the city day and night. We prayed. The enemies are still there. And they are just, it kind of made me think of David and Goliath, when the Goliath was marching along the hillside for every day, taunting them. Well, here again is the enemy taunting them. And the enemies are saying, before they know what's going on, we're going to swoop down on them and kill them and end their work. Well, people are hearing that, and it's not happening. They're just hearing that. In verse 14, it says, then I looked over the situation. I called together the nobles and the rest of the people and said to them, don't be afraid of the enemy. Remember the Lord who is great and glorious, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your homes. Nehemiah could have done anything. He could have done nothing. But what he did was wisely and calmly trusted God in the midst of this storm. And he did what God would have him do to obtain the victory. See, isn't it so much better to let God work out those details, let God fight those fights? I mean, he knows how to win them, folks. All we can do is just, from what we've seen in the movies, you know, just have a big brawl. Okay, so I want to jump on down into the end of it, or to chapter 5. See, they've been working in unity together. They've gotten half the wall done and everything is going good. And now then they're starting to protest. They see they've been working and working and working, and they have large families and they need food to survive. And then they start talking about they've mortgaged their fields and their vineyards and homes to get food during this famine. When the people, God's people, were united, the enemy couldn't stop them. But the financial enemy steps in, and this was a direct attack, stopping the work due to them not being united. So Nehemiah gets angry when he finds out the complaints about borrowing from the nobles and the officials and having to pay it back in such huge interest, charging interest for the money they borrowed to live. Man, all of this kind of made me think of what's going on today in our world. You know, it seems like the interest rates are going up and everything's getting higher. And you look, well, things were the same back then. They were being charged interest rates. They were being, I mean, everything was just going south for them. But Nehemiah was not a coward. When people were wrong, he confronted them. He spoke the truth, addressing problems head on. God's people must always use great wisdom and self-control in borrowing money. So like I say, you know, in some of the things that I have in some of my volunteer activity, when I read this, I thought, man, Nehemiah had so much more going on than what I do. But he wasn't a coward. He addressed things that were not right. That's our responsibility when we're in charge of something, to have enforced compliance, I guess, is what the best way of saying that, or figuring out some way to encourage compliance so you don't have to enforce compliance. Maybe we lead in such a way that everybody wants to walk the same path because we're showing Jesus' light along the way. So after Nehemiah gets done, they agree. In verse 12, they replied, "We will give back everything and demand nothing more from the people. We will do as you say." And then I called the priest and made the nobles and officials swear to do what they had promised. See, the wisdom of Nehemiah was that he did this in public and everybody heard what the oaths and the promises that were made. Such a good story. And so for me, what happened after I got through studying this morning is I put everything aside that I had been putting off. I made a phone call to somebody that's on this with me, and I've got my letter all typed up to send to some people that's not in compliance, and I'm going to be mailing out certified letters today, because you know what? It's the right thing to do. When you know what's the right thing to do, the word spoke to me yesterday. Today, I'm going to finish the task. Now then, let's jump into 1 Corinthians 7:25 through 40. And we're still talking about married issues. And you know what? As I was getting into that, I saw a note today as I was catching up on some of my emails about marriage. So I want to also touch a little bit on that. But regarding your question about young women who are not yet married, I, Paul, do not have a command from the Lord for them. See, Jesus did not address that, but Paul is going to be talking about what word he got. The Lord in his mercy have given me the wisdom so that can be trusted, and I will share it with you. Because of the present crisis, I think it's best for you to remain as you are. You know what? Whenever a single person certainly does not have to worry about, and I'm going to go with this on the women's side of it, because if it's just you can grab a sandwich and go. If you've got a whole family there, you've got to plan a meal, you got to cook, you got to take care of the clothes, all of your household duties. Maybe as a husband, you have, well, I say maybe, of course, as a husband, you have the duties and responsibilities of your home, of providing and things like that. Now, if you're not married, then you know what? You can drop and go, and you don't have to worry about doing all of that stuff. And that stuff is a good thing. I'm not saying it's not, because it is better to be together and have support. But in this, if we have our support and we're doing God's work, that's so much easier. You don't have to think about, oh, what am I going to cook when I get home? But back to the young women, this is what I wanted to and this is an extra, it's about marriage, but right now, there's a handful of states that allow adults to marry children of any age. And I didn't know that. California has no age limit. Girls as young as 10 have been forced to marry adult men. So there is a bill called the so-called the Respect for Marriage Act, HR 8404, and then S 4556. If that passes, every state will be required to accept and honor these perverse pedophilia enabling laws of states like California is doing right now. So I felt like I needed to let you know that, so you could be praying for Respect for Marriage Act, because it involves way more than what this sounds like. This includes children. Okay, so now then, young women. See, I don't want my young granddaughters to even have to bear something like that. Let's see, verse 29. Let me say this, dear brothers and sisters, the time that remains is short. So now on, those with wives should not focus only on their marriage. Those who weep or who rejoice or who buy things should not be absorbed in weeping or the joy of their possessions. For those who use the things of the world should not become attached to them. For this world, as we know it, will soon pass away. So with that, whenever we think about things that we want to go buy, I mean, look at a junkyard. Excuse me. If you looked in a junkyard today, there is a lot of prized possessions that somebody has bought, paid a lot of money for, possibly took them 5 or 6 years to make payments on it forever. Excuse me. And then there will come a time that thing that they bought, let's say it's a car, is in the same heap of junk as somebody else's old car that they paid $500 for, is in the same heap of junk. See, it doesn't, everything fades away. There is nothing that you can buy on this earth that's going to last forever. What we focus on is eternity. Everything that is of God is going to last forever. And that's what we got to focus on, folks, instead of thinking, oh man, I can't wait till I get to the sale at Walmart or Dillard's or whatever. Oh my goodness, there's garage sales going on. We got to go to those and get a deal. Don't worry about that. You'll throw it away. It'll be in your own garage sale one of these days, and you'll have wasted your money today. Let's go to the end, verse 39. Man, Lori, I was really going to try hard to be done at 9 o'clock this morning. Elizabeth, I'm sorry. Lori, I'm going to be close. Verse 39 says, a wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. If her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes, if only if he loves the Lord. But in my opinion, it would be better for her to stay single. I think I am giving you counsel from God's Spirit when I say this. Okay, so now I want to jump into Psalms 32 really, really quick. And man, I was reading this morning and I thought, good land, I need to come back on a few hours later and just talk about Psalms 32. But this is Psalms 32, 1 through 11, is David talking probably about his time with Bathsheba. He says, oh, what joy for those whose disobedience is forgiven, whose sin is put out of sight. Yes, what joy for those whose record the Lord has cleared of guilt, whose lives are filled with complete honesty. Now, here's what I wanted to get to. In verse 3, when I refused to confess my sin, my body wasted away. And so when we I wrote notes and I don't have them right here. Oh, no, I did. I do have them. Do you know, you realize and you know that whenever you've got something bothering you, you did something wrong, you offended somebody or something, it bothered you and you were stressed. See, we go on down to verse 5. He says, finally, I confessed all my sins to you and stopped trying to hide my guilt. But up there in 3, it said, my body wasted away. He was stressed out. Stress, unforgiveness. I looked up to see, I mean, we know that that causes real things to go on in our body. So if you have unforgiveness for your health's sake, you may suffer depression, you may suffer from sleep deprivation, anxiety, high blood pressure, you may have increased heart disease. And did you know that 61% of cancer patients have unforgiveness in their heart, in their heart? All of these things are related to unconfessed sins. I said to myself, I will confess my rebellion to the Lord, and you forgave me. All of my guilt's gone. And then he was free. He was free of all of that. Look at 1 John 1:9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. James 5:16 says, confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed of all of these other things that could happen because you have unforgiveness. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Then Proverbs 28:13, he who covers his sins will not prosper. So you got to ask for forgiveness. But who confesses and forsakes them will have mercy. You will have success. You will have all kinds of great things happen because you got them off your chest. You were cleared of it. You don't know what you've got. Maybe something's going on and you keep thinking, oh man, what I'm in some kind of a pit and I don't know why, I don't know what's going on. Psalms 139:23-24 says, search me, O Lord, and know my anxious heart. Try me and know my anxieties. See, it says, you are my hiding place. You protect me from trouble. You surround me with songs of victory. And then the Lord says, I will guide you along the best pathway for your life. I will advise you and I will watch over you. You confess all of these sins. Get all of this out of there. Get rid of it. This is the best counseling session that you could have. Some people pay a lot of money for this. Yours is free today. He will guide you. Don't be like a senseless horse or mule that needs a bit and bridle to keep it under control. Because see, that's what we were before we confessed. We were just going willy-nilly everywhere. We thought, well, we've already sinned. There's no point in anything. We've already ruined our own self. And so nobody can do anything for me. What's God going to do with this wreck of a body, with this wreck of a mind and a heart and a soul? He can clear it. He can fix it all. Many sorrows come to the wicked, but unfailing love surrounds those who trust the Lord. You see that word, trust? So rejoice, folks. Rejoice and be glad. All of you who obey him, shout for joy. All you whose hearts are pure, shout for joy. When you're doing your living room dance for Jesus this morning, shout for joy. Jan, shout for joy whenever you're dancing for Jesus today. You'll be different. But if you see somebody that is struggling don't think that it's because they have some hidden sin that they hadn't confessed. Don't just assume that you know those things that you don't know, because remember what happened with Job's friends whenever God rebuked them, because everything that happened to Job, they just knew he had unconfessed sin. That's not the case on all of it. We mind our own business. We have asked Jesus to search our heart and find what's going on. In fact, every day, wake up and repent. Well, every night, before you go to bed, repent of some of those snarky things that you might have said to your husband or your neighbor or your friends, or some of those ugly thoughts that you might have had, because that at a moment in time of yesterday, possibly they weren't pure or worthy or precious in God's sight. Ask for and just get used to repenting of some of those little silly things, and be specific on what you're repenting on. And I'm going to stop with that. I really wanted to go on for another couple of hours, Elizabeth and Lori and Donna and Michelle and everybody that knows how this works. But you know what? I'm going to ask you to continue reading that and study and see, does Nehemiah speak to you today? He spoke to me yesterday, and I'm going to be mailing my letters today, and I'm just going to get that over with and done. I'm not going to let somebody get by with something that they shouldn't have done, because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to confess all of my sins every night, because you know what? I'm an imperfect person, and I say and do the wrong things all the time. But he still loves me. And then when everything is said and done, yes, Jen, I am going to shout for joy. And I may just sing while I'm walking today. I can't carry a tune anymore, but it'll be interesting. So you all have a great day, and I love you, and I will see you in the morning. Take care. Bye-bye.